Hey there, welcome to Mike's Collection, episode 163. I'm Mike, and the part of my collection that I'm going to be talking about today is the last two waves of the Masters of the WWE Universe figures. So this is Mattel's mashup between WWE wrestling figures and their Masters of the Universe brand. So these are kind of oddball figures. They're not for everybody, but I think they're kind of fun. So I just had Wave 7 and 8 arrive in the mail from Big Bad Toy Store the other day, so I'm going to review those. Now, I will just quickly point out that I have been without power for a day and a half, which is why this video isn't lit as well as you might be used to on these videos. And I'm also going to have to try and shoot this relatively quickly because my tablet only has so much charge on it. And after I shoot this and edit this, and then I have to export it, and then I have to upload it to YouTube, and all of that takes time and energy, and I really don't want to get halfway through the process and not be able to post it. So we'll see if I do or not. I already shot some footage the other day of all these figures in the packaging, so I'm going to cut to that. We'll show you the figures in the packaging, and then I'm going to sit down and I'm going to review the figures outside of the boxes. Hopefully I have enough light for that. For whatever, I don't have a light on my tablet facing this way, but when I do facing the other way, there is a light, and hopefully that will be enough for me to get the toys and you can see them well enough. So let's do that. It's also kind of cold to hang out here in my basement with no power, so that's another reason for me to move this along quickly. But I decided to tackle this video anyway because there's only so much I can do here with no power. I'm getting a little bored. So, alright, let's get into it. Here's my latest Masters of the Universe WWE mashup figures. So here are the four figures from Wave 7 inside of the packaging. The front of the packaging is pretty much the same for all of them. You've got this same artwork here where you've got the kind of wrestling ring with the Castle Grayskull style turnbuckles and then these glowing ropes in the background, and then up top you have the Masters of the WWE Universe logo. The backs of the packaging are a little bit unique though. So you've got the same cross promotion for the other figures in the wave, but on the side you get some instructions on how these characters either hold their weapons or how their special feature works. So with Sgt Slaughter here, it looks like he's got a spin him at the waist action, which I guess I'll find out in a second once I open this guy up, but I'm guessing that's going to work similar to how the vintage Masters of the Universe figures would all swivel at the waist and then kind of spring back into action to level you with a punch. And then the best thing about all of these cards are the original artwork that you get on the top. So here you see Sgt Slaughter wearing his Man-at-Arms armor charging into action, and then you also get Rey Mysterio in his Stratos outfit flying into battle there as well. Now, one thing that's interesting to note is this shows the Rey Mysterio figure from one of the earlier waves and not the new figure that we're going to be covering later in this video. So here's the Hitman's packaging. Again, you see the same cross promotion, but here it shows you how he has 360 degree vision visor that has 3 different shades. So very similar to the Masters of the Universe character Triclops. You lower this piece on his head and you can either have his kind of classic pink sunglasses or this skull look. And I'm not even sure what the third look is. I guess we'll find out soon enough. And then on the top here, you get some cool artwork of the Hitman with his glowing visor. It looks like he is stepping out of the Snake Mountain themed wrestling ring that has the snake turnbuckles there and the ropes. So yeah, very cool. And there you've got the snake from the vintage Snake Mountain figure kind of wrapping around. Looks like it's going to attack him. So pretty cool stuff. And then we've even got some random dinosaur creature floating around here in the back corner as well. On the Junkyard Dog packaging, you see here that it talks about how he's got this dog collar that can be used to grab his enemies. So you see there they've got the chain wrapped around Kane. And it also says you can twist into powerful battle positions. So I'm not sure if they're just saying that he's posable or if he has a swing and attack action similar to the vintage figures as well. But then on the top of the packaging, we've got a really cool picture of the Junkyard Dog in his Spikor armor with his dog collar, and he appears to be fighting a giant snake Very similar to the snake that the Hitman was just dealing with on his card. And lastly from this wave we have Andre the Giant. So again, it just mentions about his different articulation and posability. And then you see here, they say you have to snap his boots onto his legs. Because Andre, he might appear to be the same height as these other characters in the packaging, but you'll notice he actually doesn't have his feet attached in there. So you have to add his boots on, which will give him that extra height and truly make him a giant. And then on the back of the packaging there, you get some artwork. So it looks like the Andre the Giant character, who, I don't know, that's some pretty weird artwork. I don't see Andre in there. But anyway, and it looks like he's attacking the Hulk Hogan character, who I do not have, unfortunately. But yeah, there you go. So that's Wave 7. Here are the 3 Wave 8 figures inside of the packaging. So this was a smaller wave, just the 3 figures. So you see here the packaging on the front is all very similar. Other than the change in the character's name, the packaging all appears to be the same. And it's also the same as what we saw on the Wave 7 figures with the Castle Grayskull kind of wrestling ring turnbuckles in the background. If we spin Chyna around here, the packaging, the back is a little different here than number 7. So instead of having the cross promotion all on one side and then the action features displayed on the other side, they've kind of stacked them here. So we've got the cross promotion for the 3 figures on the bottom, and then the action figures here on the side. So you see here she's got a battle axe / comb, and it also displays her different articulation. And then if we look at the artwork up top, you see Chyna charging into battle in the Snake Mountain wrestling ring with the snake turnbuckles, and she's about to go into battle against the Macho Man. So pretty cool. On Rey Mysterio, we get the cross promotion on the bottom. Then his action features, it talks about how his wings snap on. Again, displays his articulation. And then we get some artwork of him flying into battle. Looks like he's got some fellow winged heroes with him, perhaps Stratos. I don't know. They're kind of in the shadows. It looks like you probably have the city of Avion, which is where Stratos hails from. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. And lastly, we've got Stone Cold Steve Austin. So you see here he has a removable bionic jaw, similar to the Masters of the Universe character Trapjaw. He's also got the interchangeable arms with different weapons, just like Trapjaw as well. And for the artwork, you see Stone Cold going into battle against Rey Mysterio, who's looking very angry or animated or something. And you've got the Ultimate Warrior from one of the previous waves in there as well. So again, some pretty cool artwork. Now we can open these figures up and take a look at them. Now before we take a look at the actual figures, there is just one other thing I wanted to mention here. All of these Masters of the Universe Origins figures, as well as the Masters of the WWE Universe figures, they always come with these little mini comic books which give you a little bit of storyline, which has always been kind of neat. I find the Origins comics are better. They're usually about 4 to 6 pages. These Masters of the Universe WWE figures, they're sometimes only about 2 pages, so you really don't get a whole lot of story in here. But I will say I was a little disappointed with these ones here. So you open these up, and inside it's literally just nothing. So on the back you get, I guess, what you could call a little bit of a file card that tells you a little bit about his height, his weight, his powers. So, you know, at least you get the file card, but it's kind of silly that you open these things up and they just have completely foregone the comic book that they used to give us. And then, so that's Wave 7. On the Wave 8 figures, these 3 here, they don't even open up. Like, it's just a thin piece of paper, so you get the file card on the back. So, yeah, that's kind of a bummer if you like those little comic books. Especially, like there's not much to them, but I have collected them through all the previous waves. So yeah, it's kind of a shame that they stopped doing that. Anyway, on to the figures. Okay, so we're going to take a look at these figures outside of the packaging in no particular order. So the first one I grabbed here is Sgt Slaughter. And I think I have decent enough lighting here that you can see him okay. Although, you know, I don't have use of my lamps here, my ring light that I would normally be using. So I'm just using the light source from my tablet, but I think that's doing okay. So yeah, Sgt Slaughter. So this guy He's a WWE superstar from back in the 80s. And he's most famously known for playing this, military character. There was a time when he kind of went full anti-American. But at this point in time in his career, when he's playing this kind of like drill sergeant type, this was around the time that he actually got integrated into the G.I. Joe toy line. And so most people associate with Sgt. Slaughter with, if not wrestling, with G.I. Joe. Like, he appeared in the G.I. Joe animated series. He had multiple G.I. Joe figures made of him. And what's kind of interesting is just recently he found his way into a brand new toy line, Action Force, which I just reviewed for you guys not too long ago. So here's a brand new Sgt. Slaughter figure that just came out at the end of 2021. And this is part of a brand new toy line, Action Force. So yeah, I've never really considered myself a huge Sgt. Slaughter fan. I like him, but he wasn't integral to wrestling or G.I. Joe. He wasn't one of my favorite characters in either one of those lines. So it is kind of odd to be getting two new Sgt. Slaughter figures within about a month of each other. And they're pretty different. So anyway, let's focus on this Mattel version. So like all of these Masters of the WWE Universe figures, they're built just like the Masters of the Universe Origins figures. So they've got that same kind of squatty design based off the 80s, He-Man figures, except they're more articulated, where old He-Man figures didn't have any articulation in the ankles or the knees. They kind of just spun at the waist. Their arms kind of just move forward and backwards, and their heads turn side to side. These guys now, they have ball joint arms, so their arms can go out. Their legs can go out. They can bend their knees. They can rock their ankles. Their heads go up and down. Lots of movement there. So you'll see that same articulation on all these figures. Now, one thing I will mention about these guys, and I guess it's probably true across the Origins line and the Masters of the WWE line, is these figures are nice and affordable, which is great. They have gone up a little bit in price. When they started coming out, they were like, I think $15. Now they seem to be closer to $20. But that's fun. Like, it's a nice, cheap, affordable figure you can buy. But they also feel kind of cheap too. Just in the little bit of me moving him around to show you his articulation, you can see he already lost like 3 pieces. So this, his armor here, so this is his shoulder armor. So that's just got a little strap. It doesn't hold very tight, just kind of slides on there. He's also got his wrist armor. So this goes on the one hand like that, and it just kind of rests there. So not very secure. To pull it on, it's just got, and now he just dropped his weapon. So it's just one little tab there to kind of hold it in place. But yeah, it's very loose. The chest armor is a little better. It's got the 2 straps here and a little buckle in the back. I find if you do take this off, which you can, it is a little harder to get it to stay in place. It can be hard to get these things to reconnect. So I tend to leave them on. Now you see here, he's also got his sunglasses on, which are held nice and secure, but there's an elastic band in place here. Now when I open this figure up, that elastic band was holding his sunglasses and his hat in place. I took it off. Well, I didn't take it fully off. You can still see this clear band here, because I think I might need to leave it on there to help hold his glasses in place. Because the way all his armor falls off, I really don't want his sunglasses and his hat falling off all the time as well. But you can see he's got a pretty nice face sculpt in there. He looks like Sgt. Slaughter. He's got that big Sgt. Slaughter chin. So I'm glad that they have the option with the band there to kind of help these accessories stay on, because like I said, I'm sure they're going to fall off otherwise. So sunglasses, hat. His weapon is he's got a mace. Now as far as the colors go, so it's very true to Sgt. Slaughter's wrestling colors with the black tights and then the green shirt. But as far as the mashup to the Masters of the Universe characters, usually they take these wrestlers and they match them up pretty specifically with a Masters of the Universe character. And if you know your Masters of the Universe at all, this guy is pretty clearly based on Man-at-Arms. So here is Man-at-Arms from the Origins line. So you can see here he's got the same armor on the one shoulder. He's got armor on the one wrist. He's got the one shin armor. The other side is all exposed. He also has the club. And then he's got this armor with this kind of face protector so you can kind of duck down under that. And it's pretty much all the same here. Like, they've used the same piece on Slaughter and Man-at-Arms. The shoulder armor is the exact same. And I'm not sure. I think the wrist armor actually looks a little smaller. I could be wrong on that. Nope, that looks to be about the same as well. So the same armor across the board. Man, this stuff is really loose. It's not falling off Man-at-Arms in the same way it's falling off of Slaughter. So I don't know, maybe Man-at-Arms, I don't know what the deal is, why it's holding a little better. But yeah, this is a little frustrating, the way it keeps falling off of Slaughter like this. But anyway, it's a fun looking figure. I wish they had tighter grip. That's a problem I find across the line, whether it's wrestlers or true Masters of the Universe characters. They have really loose grip. Like, they don't hold their weapons very well. So, maybe a little frustrating to play with, but I'm just going to display these guys up in front of my Castle Grayskull. And, yeah, so Slaughter's, even though now I can't even get him to stand up. There you go. There you go. Sgt Slaughter, he's pretty cool. So next up, we'll take a look at Bret the Hitman Hart. Now, this guy was a favorite of mine when I was a kid. So when I was young, I was pretty into wrestling. That would have been kind of the mid to late 80s. It was like the heyday of Hulk Hogan and the Macho Man and stuff. I really wasn't into wrestling by the time the, what do they call it, the Attitude Era, when you had Stone Cold and The Rock and stuff. I was long out of wrestling by then, and I've never really gotten back into it. So I have some nostalgic love for the older wrestlers, but I don't really care about wrestling that much anymore. So that's why this line is kind of really fun, because it's got a lot of those classic wrestlers in here. And Hitman was a favorite of mine ever since his tag team days as a member of the Hart Foundation. And he's a fellow Canadian, so that's cool too. So he's got his very trademark pink pants with the hearts, the white boots. You know, it very much looks like Bret the Hitman Hart. He's got this sword with the pink handle, which suits the character. And then he's got this armor with the Hart Foundation logo on the chest there, so that's pretty cool. On the back, he's got these blades, and he's got this area here where he can actually store his sword, so you can slide that in there like so. So pretty cool. Now, as far as his Masters of the Universe homage, he is referencing Triclops. So Triclops, as you're probably aware, his gimmick is that he has 3 different eyes, hence Triclops. So I'll show you him in a second. But so Hitman, I don't really get this look, these skull eyes. I don't really know where that comes from. I guess it's maybe from the logo there, but that's not something I really associate with Bret. But when you turn his head around, he's got these big, thick silver sunglasses, which is a little bit more accurate to how I remember Bret. But most importantly, the big pink sunglasses. So that's what Bret wore through a good chunk of his career. And so that's probably how I'll display him. That really looks like Bret the Hitman Hart there. But you can actually take this off, and it's a pretty decent likeness of Bret underneath. So yeah, pretty cool. I like that this is removable. So he's got the same posability and functionality as Slaughter that I already showed you. But I'll just bring out Triclops here for a second. So this is the Masters of the Universe character with the 3 eyes. So you spin it around, he's got the angry eye, the angrier eye, and then the kind of casual eye. So he's been doing that since the vintage toy line. And then for his armor here, you see he's got these kind of flared shoulder pads here, and then he's got the sword. So that's where Hitman gets all that stuff from. The armor is not quite the same. Like you can see, it's got a lot more sculpted detail kind of here with the buttons in the front and that kind of, I don't know, frill at the bottom of the chest armor, and the belt has more detail. It's almost like he's got, like, Triclops has this sculpted belt, and they've got the same thing almost sculpted upside down as part of the armor here. So it's different, but you can definitely see it's got that same shoulder design. On the back, he's got a place, Triclops has a place to store his sword, just like the Hitman does. So overall, pretty cool. I like this figure quite a bit. And when I had planned to do this video, I was going to pull out some of my old wrestling figures to do some side-by-sides. I don't have a ton of wrestling figures, and some of these characters here that I'm going to show you today, like Chyna and stuff, I don't have any other figures of her. But Hitman, I actually do have a few figures of him since he's one of my favorites. But with the power being out, wrestling figures, I don't have them on display. They are in a storage bin in my crawl space, and I really don't want to go in there without any lights. So the only Hitman figure I have to kind of show you that I had handy is my Bret the Hitman Hart as he appeared on The Simpsons. So there you go. There's a couple Hitmen for you. So next up, we've got Junkyard Dog. Now this guy, he's a real classic in my mind. Like, I don't know how long this guy was in the WWF or WWE, because I don't think he stuck around all that long after I'd get into wrestling. He kind of moved on shortly afterwards. But this was the first wrestling toy that me and my brother Doug ever had. And I honestly don't remember which came first. Like, it might have been that figure that got us into wrestling, or it was at the very least that figure that got us into buying wrestling toys. Because when I was quite young, my grandfather and my Aunt Carolyn, they were into local wrestling. There was a local promotion called Grand Prix Wrestling that would come around Atlantic Canada, and we had heroes like Leo Burke and the Cuban Assassin, and we would go to these shows, and we got their autographs on like signed glossies and stuff, and we were really into that. But I don't remember if we were into that before we get into WWF wrestling, or if it kind of happened at the same time. But anyway, I remember it was for a birthday, and my older brother Doug, who's 2 years older than me, and we kind of collected all our toys together when we were kids, somebody bought him the LJN figure of Junkyard Dog. And those old LJN wrestling figures were just big hunks of plastic. They didn't have any articulation. But the Junkyard Dog just had a plastic chain that dangled from his neck. And we just really loved that figure. It was so different from anything else we had in our collection. You know, everything else was kind of small and breakable, like G.I. Joes and Transformers. But this wrestler was just big and rubbery, and you could smash him around. And we just kind of fell in love with him. And then we started buying wrestling figures like crazy after that. And we pretty much had the whole vintage line of LJN figures. Anyway, so that's why Junkyard Dog has a bit of a soft spot for me, because he was our first wrestling toy. So Junkyard Dog, there you go. He's wearing his JYD trunks. He's got the dog on his boots. It says Thump on his pants. And I think that's straight. I think he always had that, but I've long since forgotten about it. I swear when I took this figure out of the package and I turned him around, I thought he had Trump pants on for a second, and I was like, oh my god. But anyway, Thump. So yeah, this looks like a pretty standard Junkyard Dog figure. I'm sure if you took this armor off, he would look like a perfectly normal Junkyard Dog wrestling figure. Now, he does have this kind of crazy exaggerated dog chain. So as opposed to the just kind of the collar with the metal chain hanging from it of the old LJN toy, this time it's more like a weapon. So it hooks on his wrists, and then he can use this hook. It's soft rubber, so you can wrap it around another character's waist to trap them. So that's pretty cool. So you would maybe think with the the clamp there, he's got the red, the blue. You might think he's kind of an homage to Clamp Champ. So this is a Masters of the Universe character. This was the only African-American character in the vintage line. So, it would kind of make sense to maybe make Junkyard Dog an homage to him. And in maybe some ways he is, because he definitely has the same color scheme. They went with the blue and the silver. Clamp Champ always had these clamp weapons where you could grab his foes, and that's what they've given Junkyard Dog here. But the armor that he's wearing is so obviously Spike-Ore's, and they haven't actually made Spike-Ore in the Origins line yet, but here's Spike-Ore from the Classics line. So, that's what Junkyard Dog is wearing. So I think this figure is more accurately an homage to Spike-Ore, or maybe he's just a mashup of both. I don't know. But you can see that with Spike-Ore's armor, he had those kind of three squares down the front with the collar on it and the spikes all over. And that's exactly what we've got here with JYD. So anyway, it's a cool figure. I really like the head sculpt on this guy. Yeah, I dig it. So next up we've got Chyna. So Chyna is a character that she wasn't really around when I watched wrestling, but I was quite familiar with her. She kind of came around the time that I was getting out of it. And she kind of made the rounds in like pop culture. She was on Celebrity Rehab and stuff like that. So, I'm quite familiar with Chyna. And unfortunately, like a lot of wrestlers, she left us too soon. So, yeah, it's a shame. But anyway, it's kind of cool to get a Chyna figure. I've never had one before. So, the likeness isn't bad. Like, I see Chyna there in the face sculpt, which is pretty good for these relatively simply designed figures. And the costume, again, I don't really remember. I think she probably wore quite a few different wrestling costumes. I kind of associate her with a black outfit, but I think she probably wore purple at one point as well. Now, this figure here is pretty clearly based off of She-Ra, who... She-Ra is the only Princess of Power character that we've gotten in this Origins line. I don't know if we're going to get more, but if you're familiar in the 80s, so He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, that was its own like kind of boys toy line, and it had its own cartoon, and then they did a spin-off about He-Man's sister She-Ra, and those figures were more dolls, and they had rooted hair that you could comb, and it had its own cartoon. So they made She-Ra in the Origins line, but they haven't made any of her, her friends like Bo and Flutterina or any of those other ones. So I don't know if we'll get them or not. But you can see here that she shares some of the same design elements there. So I think they've got the same boots, it's probably the same bottom piece there, the bikini bottom, but She-Ra's got that belt kind of covering it up. And then the chest armor, you can see that kind of swirly design. I believe that's the same sculpt. It looks a little different because Chyna's got more painted detail with all those little speckles emanating from it, but I think it's the same design. And then the cuffs, the same. So pretty much the same, I think, from the neck down. It's just the new head sculpt. Now, one thing that's kind of interesting about Chyna is the way her little headdress works here is you can pop it off. It's got these kind of two little pegs on the back there. Sorry. Let's see those there. And they kind of discreetly poke into the sides of her head. You can see there's some openings there, which is cool because you don't really see them. So if you don't want to use that there, you don't have these big glaring holes on her head, but they do kind of discreetly tuck in there. And the fact that they sculpted this helmet, like this headdress for her, does kind of make me wonder if we're maybe going to see another version of She-Ra come out, because this is how She-Ra looked in the cartoon. But for this Origins toy, they gave her this kind of bigger, more awkward-looking headdress, which is based on the vintage toy. So I don't know why they wouldn't have maybe just reused this piece for Chyna, but the fact that they went ahead and sculpted that whole other piece makes me think that maybe they have plans for another version of She-Ra somewhere down the line. But anyway, the only other thing to mention about her is her accessory. So this is a throwback right to the old vintage Princess of Power toys, in that she has an axe, but it's also a comb. So you could have combed her hair if she had rooted hair, which I'm sure she would have had if this was an 80s figure. So that's kind of a neat little homage as well. So there you go, that's Chyna. So next up we've got Rey Mysterio, and he's matched up with Stratos. And now this is a cool figure. I really like the kind of metallic silver paint job they've given him. This metallic blue paint they've used. It looks really cool. Even the wings kind of have this metallic sheen to them. Now this is a character who the harness was not attached to him in the package, so I had to put that on. And as I mentioned about some of the other characters, it can be pretty difficult to mess with this soft rubber. Like, it doesn't, I'm sure I could if I really wrestled with it, but you see that tag, it just kind of sits in there. It doesn't really snap into place. And then you've got to try and put those two pegs through those holes, but it's such soft rubber. It's so hard to get it to stick and stay in place. So I kind of just gave up on it. And you can't really tell from the front, so I might just put them up on display like this. But it is kind of annoying. So yeah, cool figure. Again, Rey Mysterio. He was kind of after my time from wrestling. But I've seen highlights of him. I always liked the kind of luchador, high-flying wrestlers and stuff. So yeah, he's a really cool character. But what's interesting about this toy is in one of the earlier waves of Masters of the Universe, or Masters of the WWE Universe, we already got Rey Mysterio. Now, we have got a few characters more than once, but I think this is the first time that we got a character who's homaging the same character. So these are both Rey Mysterio. So you can see they share a lot of the same parts, but they're both Stratos, which is kind of weird. So like here he still has the wings that clip to his arms. He's got the same jet backpack. So I just don't know why they felt like revisiting him. I don't mind. I think these are both cool looking figures. They're both, they're not the exact same. Like you'll see, for example, this guy's wings are much larger. I think they took these clip-on wings from the Classics line of Masters of the Universe, which are like 6-7 inches tall. And then by the time they made this figure, they were able to take the wings from the Origin Stratos, which they didn't have at the time when they made him. So here's Origin Stratos. So this is the character that these guys are homaging. So this guy's kind of the Birdman from Masters of the Universe. Although it's a little unclear. He lives in a city in the sky, but the fact that he has clip-on wings and a jetpack, and he's kind of hairy like a monkey, it's really unclear. Is he really a Birdman, or is he a monkey man that wishes he was a Birdman? But anyway, you can see with his little clip-on wings, these are the wings that this new Rey Mysterio has. The jetpacks are actually different. Stratos has the smallest pack of these guys. But yeah, the colors are all kind of the same. The fact that they've added silver on this one kind of references Stratos' gray, hairy body, I guess. I'm not really sure which of the two of these I prefer. Maybe the new one. I do like that metallic-y silver paint. But anyway, it's a pretty cool mashup, so I don't mind getting 2 different versions of it. So next up, we've got Stone Cold Steve Austin. Now, this is the second version of Steve Austin we've got. I don't have the first one. It came with a wrestling ring accessory, and he was basically a standard Stone Cold Steve Austin, except he had snake arms and snake eyes. So he was kind of supposed to be homaging one of the Snake Men. But here, he's homaging Trapjaw. So Trapjaw is a fan favorite Masters of the Universe character who, as the story goes, I think it was Skeletor basically beat the hell out of him, ripped his jaw off and ripped his arm off, and he had to get these cybernetic replacements. So he's got this steel jaw, and then he's got this mechanical arm, and you can swap out the different pieces. So you see here I've got a gun accessory on Trapjaw, but on his belt he also stores this claw accessory and this hook accessory, and they can just be stored right there on the belt. And as far as the legs go, you see he's got these kind of bionic legs with these little, I wouldn't call them knee pads because they're over his knees, but this is all very true to the classic or the vintage Trapjaw look. He's got that skull and crossbones on his belt. And we see all those design elements carry over into Stone Cold. So he's got the same belt. He's got the same legs, lacking some of the paint apps. Then he's got the vest with the Austin 316 and the skull logo on there. Now he also has the mechanical arm. So you see here, I've got the claw accessory. This guy didn't actually come with the gun accessory that he's got, but he does have the interchangeable hook. So if you want to change the claw for the hook, you can do that. And, okay, well, I guess I forgot to show you this feature anyway, but most of these characters, the arms come off. So do the legs and the heads. They're all made with very interchangeable parts. So the intent is, so let's just say you wanted to just maybe give Trapjaw a silver arm. So pop that off. Pop that on, like so. Should work. It works okay. Maybe if I wrestle with it a little bit more. But you can give him that, and then I guess you could give Stone Cold a black arm with the gun if you want to. So yeah, there's that fun play feature of how interchangeable these characters are. Now, one thing that's kind of interesting with Stone Cold is I kind of thought the jaw would maybe move, like a little articulated, but it doesn't really. This thing just kind of clips onto his ears, so he still has a full human face underneath. So this thing actually just pops right off, like so. So that can give you a much more standard Stone Cold, if you prefer. Another thing that's kind of interesting is you could snap him on upside down, and you can give him a little crown, a little armor there if you want to. So anyway, pretty cool Stone Cold figure. What else we get on there? So he's got a belt with some hooks too, so you could store the extra hook on there, as I've done with Trapjaw. Skull on the back. But yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot more to say about Stone Cold here. So the last figure I have to show you today here is Andre the Giant. So this is a guy that was kind of on his way out right around the time I was getting into wrestling. It was right around the time with WrestleMania 3 when Hulk Hogan body slammed Andre the Giant, and that was kind of Andre passing on the mantle of being kind of the big hero character to Hulk Hogan. So I know that a lot of people hold him in very high regard. Unfortunately, I like Andre the Giant, but for me, he was kind of portrayed as the big bad guy. Like, I came into wrestling just when they were building up Hulk Hogan and making him to be such a big thing, and Andre the Giant was a bad guy working for Bobby Heenan. So it always kind of left a bad taste in my mouth with Andre. I always kind of saw him as a heel, where people that had been into wrestling before I knew him more as like maybe a heroic character and stuff. Now, over the years, especially once I learned that the bad guy wrestlers weren't really bad guys, and, I saw Andre the Giant in movies and interviews, he seems like he was a really sweet guy and everything. So this is another guy that we lost too soon, unfortunately. But I don't think I currently have any Andre the Giant figures. I no longer have my LJN figure. I got rid of most of those. But yeah, so it's pretty cool to get a new Andre figure. And I think this guy looks pretty cool. So he's got this armor here with the big A for Andre on there, and then he's got this little tiara or crown or armor, whatever you call that, and that comes off. And I think the likeness to Andre is decent. He's got the same articulation as everybody else, so the elbows, these swivels at the wrists. I don't know if I talked about that earlier. Swivels at the waist. Now, I don't know if you can interchange his parts as easily with everybody else's because he is a bit bigger. In the packaging, I showed you how his boots weren't attached. So if I stand him up next to a standard character, like Stone Cold here, you can see that Andre is quite a bit taller. So having those boots separated in the package did make quite a bit of difference. So very cool. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a Hulk Hogan from this line to pair with him. They did make a Hulk Hogan, but he came in the same wrestling ring package with the other Stone Cold, and I had never seen that in stores anywhere, so I was never able to pick it up. But it would be nice to have some Masters of the WWE, Hulk Hogan and Andre together so I could relive that big WrestleMania 3 match. Now, you might look at his costume and think, well, who's he supposed to represent? It seems kind of like maybe just generic barbarian. But one thing that's kind of neat, in Masters of the Universe, the very last toys that were supposed to come out in the vintage line in the 80s were a couple of giants. Titus for the good guys and Megator for the bad guys. But they only ever got released in Europe, so most kids in America never even knew about them. And then when the Masters of the Universe Classics line came out in like 2009, not only did they make new toys of all the classic Masters of the Universe characters, but they started making characters from kind of obscure corners of the mythology. So characters in the cartoon that had never had toys before, and characters like Titus and Megator who never saw wide release in America. So I have the classics version of Titus here, and this is based on the vintage toy. It's a little different looking because the vintage toy had rooted hair and stuff. But you can see here with the design, with that crown he has on his head and the big armor with the G. So this is clearly who Andre the Giant is modeled after. So it makes perfect sense, since Titus was the giant of the original Masters of the Universe. Andre the Giant is the giant of this line. Now, I don't know if this is true, but I just heard this in Pixel Dan's video. I was watching, he did a video on these same figures the other day. And I did think it was odd that Wave 8 only had 3 figures when all the previous waves had like 4 figures. And he said it was because they were actually going to include the Big Show in this wave as well. So they would have used the same body. So Big Show would have been just as tall as Andre. And that he would have been modeled after Megator, the evil giant. So that would have been really cool if we had gotten Titus and Megator in homages. But then I guess because the Big Show signed a contract with a rival wrestling company, that they ended up pulling him from the line. That's all I got from Pixel Dan. I don't know if that's true or not, but it makes sense. So anyway, there's Andre. That is the last of the Masters Universe, Masters of the WWE Universe line. It's supposedly going to continue in a just wrestling line. So I think Mattel is going to keep this style of figure. So if you really like this simple style, affordable type of figure, I think you'll still be able to get them, but they're going to be just straight wrestlers now. There's no more of this silly kind of Masters of the Universe homage. So yeah, stay tuned for those if you're a fan. And otherwise, let's wrap this up. Okay, so that was Wave 7 and 8 of Mattel's Masters of the WWE Universe figures. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and leave me comments below. And I'll be back soon with another video. Until then, ciao.